Hey guys, Kelade here. So you guys may or may not have heard, just a couple hours after my last video, Blizzard did actually put a hotfix out for Arms Warriors. So here it is right in front of you, right? 1 point of mastery now increases deep wounds damage by 10%, was 1% before. Damage of all arms abilities decreased by 14%. This excludes arms Azerite traits. In fact, I'm pretty sure Blizzard actually ended up buffing arms Azerite traits, because when they released the hotfix, which was literally right after I made the video, so my gear did not change at all. My character's stats on exactly like how much like a seismic wave, for example, does, it actually increased something around 14 to 16%. So I would actually say that maybe not only did they decrease abilities, but they somehow also increased the Azerite. I don't know why they didn't talk about it and put it in these patch notes, but that was something that I was noticing. I'm not sure why that happened, but it did happen. So that's something that's also there. Now, as far as how worth it is mastery now. So currently my character, right, what I'm simming at, these are basically my single target talents. I'm going Skull Splitter, Double Time, Massacre, Banning Stride, Warbreaker, In for the Kill, and Anger Management. And if you guys want to take a look, I kind of did sim like some of the below talents here so kind of compare them. This talent that I just showed you is right now simming the best DPS for my character right now. With this current talent setup and this gear, my stat weights for my Arms Warrior is going to be something, crit and haste is at the top right here. Crit is 1.53, haste is 1.45 value. That does jump around. I got a couple upgrades yesterday. Before that, my haste was actually a little bit higher than crit. So those two for Arms Warriors are kind of at the top. And then you have your versatility and mastery at the bottom. I think the reason why my versatility might look a little bit high is if you look right here, my character literally has 0 versatility. So that kind of is boosting it up a little bit. But you can kind of look at it as like crit and haste are 2 better stats, and then like mastery and verse are like the 2 worst stats. But mastery is not complete garbage anymore. You can have it on your gear and it's just fine, but it's nowhere close to being the best stat right now. Also, I feel like this change in mastery is more of a band-aid solution, because if you look at your character sheet right now, you have like, for example, 18% crit, 16% haste, and then 154% mastery. It looks really weird, and right now if you really wanted to and you stack like all mastery, for example, you could actually get over like 300 mastery, which is pretty bonkers for just the beginning of an expansion. So I feel like Blizzard's going to adjust this in the future, and they kind of just wanted to have a fix right away, because they're literally right now giving you 80% free mastery. I feel like that doesn't have to be like that bloated, especially with the whole point of a new expansion, scaling everything back. Doesn't make sense for a stat to be this blown out of proportion this early on. Now, in regards to some of the things that might have changed, one thing that didn't change, but it was kind of there, it was kind of like, I feel like sleeper OP, was the seismic wave trait, right? So overpower causes a seismic wave that deals set amount of damage. We kind of talked about this in the last video, how I felt like it can kind of compete with Lord of War, but I did not realize that you can sweeping strikes the overpower and it'll shoot out 2 waves. So for example, if I have 1 340 seismic wave trait, that 1 overpower is going to do a wave that does like 2.3 thousand damage, right? If I have 3 of those traits, that's going to do around 6.9 thousand damage. Now, if I sweeping strikes the overpower and it multiplies it by 2, now you're talking 13.8 thousand damage AoE, right? And then of course, if you take the Dreadnought talent, you do that twice, bam, you're doing crazy amount of DPS that is very, very hard to be matched by any other spec in the game. So definitely, Seismic Wave is very, very strong right now for Arms Warriors. Definitely take it. And it sims one of the highest single targets too. And for AoE, it's leaps and bounds above any other trait. It is crazy how strong this is. I am a little bit worried that Blizzard might nerf it because of how strong this trait is. But if you can get your hands on 3 seismic wave traits right now, definitely do it. Get in the dungeon and you'll do crazy amounts of DPS. Just know that it does like do like a little line in front of you, so you kind of want to aim your character and the mobs in a way where you'll cleave the rest of the mobs that are behind it. So get that. And as far as for talents, you can still do War Machine, Double Time. I've seen some people do Storm Ball. That could be useful, right, depending on your dungeon. If there's some mobs that need to be stunned, to bring some utility, because right now all Warrior really brings to a mythic dungeon is just a raw DPS. And of course go Fervor Battle, and then I do Banning Stride. And then for your 75, 90, and 100 rows, you have a couple choices in each row, right? So here you have Warbreaker versus Cleave. Now, because of the change in the mastery, your passive actually does some damage. And if you pick Cleave, you're going to do more damage in a more prolonged fight. And you're going to do more damage if fights are actually too short. So like, it's kind of weird. If you can Warbreaker every single pack, Warbreaker guaranteed is the best. But if you're killing mobs so quickly that you ward break every other pack, it is possible for Cleave to outpace it. Or if you're killing mobs kind of slow to where like you're kind of holding on to ward breaker because things are kind of dying slowly, but you don't want to waste a ward breaker before the next pack, that's where you can kind of see Cleave come out. But if you just want that raw burst damage that arms can do, ward breaker and blaze arms still probably does the highest amount of burst. And not only that, especially if you have, you know, 3 out of 3 seismic wave and you're using dreadnought, ward breaker I feel like does better because it buffs the damage that this does too. So right now I am sticking with ward breaker here, but definitely depending on your group comp, if you're like the only DPS in a group, like if you're hard carrying a group, Cleave works out really well because it provides you with consistent high damage that I was kind of talking about where arms where it didn't have before, but now they do with Cleave. So it's really good for any time if you're just the only DPS that's really doing damage. For the 90 row, in for the kill versus Avatar. Of course, with Warbreaker, I prefer in for the kill. You hit one burst button with your Warbreaker and you just go to town DPS. Avatar, I just don't like Avatar because it costs a global cooldown. Not only that, it doesn't feel like it does that much damage. It's only 20% increase, whereas in for the kill, the haste is actually pretty insane. It does help you with that increased rage generation, especially right now where our gear isn't too geared, right? We're not like too heavily statted. We're still a little bit rage thirsty, so I do prefer the haste. And then the last row, we have anger management and dreadnought. If you don't have any seismic wave traits, then definitely go with anger management. But if you have, I would say 2 or 3 seismic wave traits, try out dreadnought. It's pretty crazy the amount of not even just burst, but also consistent AoE that you can do with this. So right here, this is kind of what I ended up with as my favorite talent setup. Now the other thing I want to talk about is trinkets. Some people are asking me about the Dark Moonfare Fathom. Should you get this? Yes, you definitely should. It is better than the dungeon trinkets. And on top of that, there's actually another trinket. There's actually a world quest trinket, Incessantly Ticking Clock. It's actually also better than the dungeon trinket. So if we take a look at the trinket sims that I have right here, so I'm just kind of simming. Right, I'm putting the world boss trinket on here. Obviously, you can't get this trinket yet. World bosses are not going to be out until the first raid comes out. So we're going to have to wait 2 more weeks for world bosses. But, you know, if this guy does come out, you obviously get that. But if we don't look at the world boss trinket aside, Dark Moonfare is the best trinket right now for single target. And actually, the Incessantly TikTok trinket is actually pretty good. It's a little bit higher than Riding Barnacle, but it's up there. And a lot of that does have to do with the fact that it did get hotfixed yesterday. So if we kind of scroll up to all the way to yesterday, it did get hotfixed to where the procs now scale properly with eye level, so we can see that being useful. Another trinket that you can get from World Quest that's also useful is the Emblem of Xanalar. Basically any trinket out there that gives like strength and then some sort of like haste or mastery or crit or whatever stat. Try it out, right? Put it in your sims and see what happens. If you see a trinket that's out there for World Quest, try to get it, because if you can Titan Forge it to 355, it could very likely be better than whatever trinket you have, right? That's not 355. Of course, as far as for the weapons, the Getiiku, the bleed weapon, that's still going to be the best. As far as for where you can get seismic wave, like we're not going to make this into a whole gear guide, but let's just really quickly talk about where you can get those, right? So the helmet is going to come from Shrine of the Storm. So if we come over here, we go to helmet. Bam, that is the helmet you want. There's a seismic wave trait that you can get. As far for shoulders, that is going to come from the mother load. So there's the shoulders, and bam, there's the seismic wave trait. As far as for the chest, that is going to come from Toll de Gore. So we go to chest, bam, there is your 3rd seismic wave trait. Those are the 3 dungeons that you can try farming heroic, or you know, if you have limited time on your mythics and you can't do all 10 mythics this week, try to do these 3 because these are where you're gonna get the seismic wave traits. So definitely try to get this because it's gonna greatly increase both your burst and your consistent AoE and single target. Crazy good Azerite trait, so take advantage of it right now before it might potentially get nerfed. And then just really quickly, since I've done like 2 rounds of mythic dungeons now, right, last week and this week, comparing the damage differences between Arms versus Fury. On Fury, I'm generally averaging around 9k DPS overall. So like after you finish the dungeon, you look at your overall DPS, including, you know, single target, boss fights, AoE, small cleave, stuff like that, 9k. But on the Arms Warrior, I'm averaging around 12 to 13k DPS. That's around a 40% increase. So it's definitely very drastic between the 2 specs. The biggest reason why, in my opinion, is that the burst from Arms is much crazier. The consistency from Arms is also crazier for AoE, especially if you go with a cleave setup. And then of course, the single target for Arms is also stronger. So right now, there isn't really a scenario where Fury does beat Arms. I feel like the only place where I think Fury has an advantage over Arms is in Island Expeditions if you don't have a healer, because obviously Fury has slightly better self-healing. But short of that, for any content where you have a healer, I definitely think Arms is stronger right now. So hopefully Blizzard buffs Fury a little bit. I think one way that Blizzard can buff Fury is if they made it so their Whirlwind Cleave does an infinite number of targets, right? Just it cleaves on every target instead of being limited to 5, because I think that's one of the big reasons why right now Arms is so crazy. Because if you look at both of their AoE setups, right, basically what you can do as an Arms warrior is you Warbreak one pack and you Blaze Storm, right? You Warbreak another pack and then you start doing the Seismic Wave overpower spam, you know, between whirlwinds, right? So you can do that basically for the entirety of the dungeon, and your DPS is always there. And both of those AoE setups I said have an infinite amount of targets, right? Warbreaker hits infinite amount, Blaze Storm hits infinite amount, Overpower / Seismic Wave hits an infinite amount, Whirlwind hits an infinite amount. So that's kind of why right now Arms is doing so well, I feel like, too. But Fury does seem kind of limited because they can really only AoE effectively 5 targets. I mean, Fury has Blaze Storm too, and their Dragon Roar is doing okay damage, but it's nowhere close to what Arms can do. But don't worry guys, I'll still be playing Fury Warrior, so we'll still have Fury content coming out, but I will also be playing as Arms right now, especially since how much stronger they are than Fury. Hopefully this video is helpful for you guys to kind of understand where Arms is at after the changes, and what kind of talents and gear what you guys should be going for. And as always, thanks for checking out the video guys. Feel free to subscribe to see more. See ya.